They called him Ubbe Ragnarson, son of Ragnar Lothbrok, brother to legends, warrior of the great heathen army. But where others sought vengeance and glory, Ubbe sought something far rarer among the sons of the North, peace born from honor. He was the quiet storm among louder tempests, overshadowed by Ivar the Boneless's fury, by Vitzerk's bloodlust, by Bjorn Ironside's fame. Yet in the fading years of the Viking age, when the old gods still echoed across the North Sea, it was Ubbe who carried the last ember of his father's dream, not a world drowned in blood, but one where Vikings could live, rule, and be remembered. This is the saga of Ubbe Ragnarson, the warrior scholar, the explorer, and the forgotten peacemaker of the sons of Ragnar. His story begins, as all great Viking stories do, in vengeance. When news reached Scandinavia that Ragnar Lothbrok, the dragon slayer, the scourge of kings, had been executed by King Gla of Northumbria, the world seemed to stop for his sons. He had been cast into a pit of serpents, his blood crying out to Odin for vengeance. And so around 865 the great heathen army was born, a vast coalition of Viking warbands from Denmark, Norway, and Sweden, united under Ragnar's banner and driven by fury. At its head stood Ragnar's sons, Ivar the Boneless, the tactician, cold as the iron he wielded; Halfdan Ragnarsson, the restless conqueror; Vitzerk, the reckless; Sigurd Snake in the Eye, the proud; and Ubbe Ragnarson, the calm heart amid the storm. Ubbe was no stranger to battle. Like his brothers, he had been raised in the arts of war and seafaring. The sagas say he inherited Ragnar's courage and Aslaug's wisdom, a rare balance of fire and thought. In 865, the great heathen army landed on the English coast, a force unlike anything the Anglo-Saxons had seen before. They wintered in East Anglia, then swept north to capture York Jorvik, the great stronghold of Northumbria. It was here that Ragnar's sons exacted their revenge. King Gla, the man who had killed Ragnar, was captured. The sagas say he was executed by the blood eagle, a gruesome ritual in which his ribs were spread open to form wings, a sacrifice to Odin himself. Whether this is myth or history, one thing is certain: Gla's death marked the beginning of the Viking domination of England. But as the years went on, the brothers' unity began to fray. Ivar, brilliant but merciless, ruled through fear. He sought to dominate the English kingdoms utterly. Ubbe, by contrast, believed they could rule through respect. He saw value in diplomacy and settlement, and planting roots, not just burning cities. When the great army divided, with Ivar marching north and Ubbe remaining in Mercia and East Anglia, it was not just a strategic split, it was philosophical. Ubbe's presence in the chronicles after the division is quieter, but no less significant. He ruled East Anglia as a leader rather than a tyrant, forging alliances with local chieftains and learning the ways of the Anglo-Saxons. Yet fate would not grant him peace so easily. In 878, after years of uneasy truces and Viking settlements, Ubbe faced the rising power of Alfred the Great, King of Wessex, a man who would one day unite England. Alfred's forces had been driven to the marshes, but he was gathering strength. Ubbe, commanding a fleet from Ireland and Wales, landed in Devon with around 23 ships, seeking to reassert Viking dominance. The battle that followed would be Ubbe's last. At a place the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle calls Sinwit, modern-day Countisbury Hill or Cannington, Ubbe and his warriors besieged a Saxon fort. Confident in victory, the Vikings waited for the defenders to surrender. But the Saxons, led by Alderman Odda of Devon, launched a surprise dawn attack. Ubbe fought fiercely, perhaps even desperately, his golden standard bearing the raven of Odin fluttering in the wind. But the battle turned against him. The chronicle says they slew 840 men and their chief Ubbe. His banner, the Raven Banner, was captured. It was said to hold the fate of battles. If it fluttered, the army would win. If it hung still, death awaited its bearer. On that day it hung still. Ubbe fell, not in retreat, but fighting to the end, surrounded by the bodies of his warriors. The loss at Sinwit was a devastating blow. Ubbe's death marked the end of the great army's first generation of leaders. His brothers continued to fight, Ivar in Ireland, Halfdan in Northumbria, Witzurk in Francia, but none could replace his balance of courage and conscience. Yet the sagas hint that Ubbe's story did not end in death. Some versions, particularly in the Saga of Ragnar's sons, claim he survived, voyaged west, and became one of the first Norsemen to explore distant lands beyond Ireland. Later Icelandic traditions even link Ubbe to the discovery of Vinland, the mysterious land across the Western Ocean. Whether this is truth or poetic legend, the notion fits his spirit. While his brothers sought kingdoms, Ubbe sought horizons. Though often overshadowed by his brothers, Ubbe's legacy endures in fragments across sagas, chronicles, and archaeology. He was remembered not for cruelty, but for fairness, a quality rare among conquerors. In many ways, Ubbe embodied the transition of the Viking world, from raiders to settlers, from destroyers to builders. In the Anglo-Saxon records, he is a formidable foe, but one whose death is spoken of with a kind of respect. In Norse memory, he is the faithful son, the one who honored Ragnar's name without losing his humanity. Ivar died in Dublin, crippled and vengeful to the end. Halfdan was slain in Ireland by his own kind. Bjorn sailed to the Mediterranean, his story fading into legend. But Ubbe, whether he died on English soil or sailed west to the edges of the world, became the bridge between the age of conquest and the age of settlement. Through men like him, the Viking world transformed. The raiders became rulers. The wanderers became founders of kingdoms. If Ragnar Lothbrok dreamed of an empire beyond the sea, it was not Ivar's rage that would build it, but Ubbe's vision. He was the son who fought not only for vengeance, but for meaning, the warrior who saw beyond war, the Viking who, perhaps more than any of his brothers, truly embodied his father's heart. And though his banner fell at Sinwit, his spirit did not. It lived on in every Viking who chose to stay, to build, and to shape a new world upon the English shore. As the old skalds might have sung, fire forged his courage, blood proved his name, but peace was his greatest conquest.